Okay.
Right. Hello, Chris. Lovely to see you on Zoom.
Yeah, you too, Sophie. Thanks for having me.
I've just been listening to your album over and over again, and it's one of those albums that draws a person in the first time around, and then you keep getting drawn back. And I just found I was pressing repeat
Oh, that's good.
over and over again, and I know it's an album that came about because of the death of your father. And in
Yep.
so many ways, it is an album about grief, but there is also a lot of light in it, and it's nothing twee or a sense that you're trying to put a brave face on things. I think it's rather this open-hearted light is how I was thinking of it. So I'm wondering what you were feeling when you started to write the album.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for recognizing that from the album. I've found that the people that truly understand it and get it are the ones that have that response to it. So I appreciate that. And yeah, how I was feeling. I think because it spanned over quite a few years, there's definitely mixed feelings in there. And it was a way of trying to combine all of those feelings, but at the same time tell a story.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, yeah, it covers obviously the initial stages of grief, which sometimes you're in a little bit of shock. And a little bit unsure about what's happening and what's going on. Then it obviously portrays the heaviness, the deep sadness and darkness of grief, and the things you need to go through in order to express how you're feeling and get those emotions out. And then there's other sides, as you said, that are a little bit more, shades of hope. And I think that comes across because I really wanted to write, I really wanted to have some songs in there that reflected the great times and also the admiration I had for my dad.
Yeah, it's interesting because through all the tones of the album, not just the lyrics, I think, but the way you sing and also the instrumental tones, I got a real sense of a portrait of your father, which sounds weird because, of course, don't know him, don't know you.
Oh,
But it felt like this
yeah.
really layered, I don't want to say complete because, again, it's not a complete life that you can present, but it did feel like almost like you were painting with all these different colors and you came up with this really colorful portrait.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I feel like that there were definitely lots of aspects to my dad's life, and there was a lot of things that we experienced as a family, as children, and also the fact that it spanned his illness of having MS for 28 years. It went from the period of when I was 6 years old all the way through to when he passed when I was, in my mid 30s. So there's a lot of changes in that time, and there's a lot of phases that everyone went through.
Yeah. And I suppose for you as a son as well, it will be easy to not engage with a father who's so ill, particularly if you're such a young child when it first started, and then to keep growing up through that. Some young men would just think, no, this is, or some people for that matter would say, this is too much, I don't want to engage. But clearly you showed up and stayed with it, stayed in that relationship with your father, which I do think is a conscious choice for a lot of us in all sorts of situations.
Yeah, I was always very drawn to him, and I have a sensitive side, a sensitive soul, and a lot of the heartache for me and a lot of the hardship was always sort of feeling like, I can't believe he has to go through and endure all this. So I was always very much wanting to help as much as I could, and be that person that could be there by his side.
And I was reading, in reading about the album, for you there was a sense of you didn't want him to keep living with this debilitating illness. So after 28 years of it, he was set free. But there's also a line in the title song where you say of him, every day gets easier because it feels like we're together. So I'm wondering, in letting go of him, did you also find a way of keeping him close?
Yeah, for sure. We were always very close, and I think that I've just consciously wanted to make sure that that stayed the same way. I'm quite a spiritual person, and I feel things through nature, through light, through sunlight, through warmth, and that was something that he always enjoyed also. And he was very outdoorsy, as am I. And I think that any time that I'm outside, and especially with my family, I feel that connection with him.
I'm often reminded when talking about grief of a line from Ruth Park, the Australian, well, she was born in New Zealand, the Australian author. Her husband died when she was still in her 40s, and she never remarried. And she was once asked why not, and she said, "Why should I stop loving him just because he's in another country?" And I
Oh
always
wow!
thought that's
Yeah,
a really good way of expressing exactly what you're
yeah.
saying. You know, if you're in nature, you feel connected. Your father's not in this same room with you, but he's not
Yeah.
far.
I think there's a length of time as well that, when people spend so much time with that person, that that connection just feels like eternity. So to go and sort of change that, or not change that, but to have that filled by someone else, I think would be a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah. And in documenting that relationship with him and him as a person and you as a person in relationship to him and with him, obviously you couldn't cover everything. So how did you choose which parts to put in and leave out, or did you follow your instinct on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I had probably twice as many songs to choose from. Um, you know, I kind of I chose the songs in the end, the ones that felt the most true, and I don't really know how to explain why they did. Sometimes it was lyrics. Um, Other times it was kind of melody and the way that the chorus kind of grabbed you. Um, I I think that my if there was to be some decisions behind that process that I could actually pinpoint, I think it was that um, if there was a song that kind of was too private, I decided not to, out of respect for my family.
Mhm.
Um, I think there were definitely some other songs that obviously portrayed a little bit more darker, um, kind of meanings behind them, and they kind of unveiled a little bit more about sort of how I behaved and my experiences as a teenager as well.
Right.
And yeah, I just decided I thought that it was best to keep them out. So
Yeah.
I guess in answering your question, I wanted to keep the most beautiful ones and the ones that would be, the part that would match the story that I wanted to tell.
Yeah. For you as a songwriter to have those songs sitting there, do you suspect there might be a time when they're kind of prodding at your brain and you'll find a way to rework them, perhaps make them not such a close narrative, give the story to
Yeah,
another character, that sort of thing?
very much so. I don't know if it's going to be something that's going to be in the short term, in the near future, but you never know down the track what will happen. So
Yeah.
I've been busy writing whenever I can with the release. Been so busy the last few months, but everything that I seem to be writing and coming up with now is very much based around my own family and my experience that I'm having at the moment. And it's kind of like it's a bit of an after the flood kind of feel. I've had this flood, this outpour of emotion and grief, and now it's time to really focus on the things that are so amazing in my life. So yeah.
You mentioned that the songs that you chose for the album were the ones that you felt were the most beautiful, and I'd certainly agree with that. But
Thanks.
it's also a great criterion. We don't tend to think of beauty as, I think, in
Yeah,
kind of art really well, apart
as,
from
as
visual art.
sorrow and sadness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but it's and I suppose it is subjective as well. But for you as the creator, you totally get to decide what's beautiful about your
yeah.
work and which works are beautiful. But yeah, is that something that came to you instinctually, that criterion?
Yeah, for sure. And it's ever since I've sort of had the release, particularly from the first single, Lionheart, the title track, I have had mixed reviews, and I am learning that some people they see a different side of it to what I do and to what you do.
Right.
And to what, there's been, the reception has just been, I've been absolutely blown away. I've had people reach out to me that, are going through similar circumstances. I've had, mothers reach out to me that their sons have been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I've had, fathers reach out to me and say that their mothers have had multiple sclerosis for many years, and it's just been a really nice way to be able to connect people together and to talk about our experiences, and that sort of reassures me that that what I'm doing is, or what I've done is a nice thing. It's a great thing, and that people are really are getting something out of it, more so than just listening to a song. And then on the other side, I've had a lot of people that haven't been able to sort of ask the questions that you've been asking me, because they simply want to avoid the topic.
Right.
And they're not quite, and that's okay. They're not quite comfortable with talking about grief or death in general. And then I've had other people that have sort of seen it as an album just full of sorrow and sadness, and it's a little bit of a downer. And I don't, for me, I go, well, it's not meant to be that way. It's meant to be more something that is special and beautiful, as you said.
Yeah, look, certainly there were tears for me, and when I think about some of the songs there are, like even sitting here now talking to you, it's like, oh, but that's the emotion you've created, and that's a particular kind of artistry and magic, I think. But it's also, I think it does raise that interesting idea that for some people, grief means anger, and if anger is not on the album, are you really grieving, or is it something they can recognize as grief? Because I just remember the first time I put it on, having it playing away, I think by track 3, I just thought, oh, this is lovely. It's lovely.
Thank you.
Though I could hear lyrically and in your voice that grief. But yeah, that was my first impression.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I'm touched by the way that it has been able to impact people, in whatever emotion that they experience.
Yeah.
I had one person say to me that they listened to it and they loved it so much that they couldn't put it on again. And I was like, wow, I've never really heard that before. They said they felt so affected and emotionally sort of touched by it. And they went, wow, if this guy is trying to pull the heartstrings of people, he's been incredibly successful at doing that, because he's pulled mine, but I don't know if I'll be able to put it on again for a little while. So hopefully maybe, it'll just be some time, or it could be the fact that they're going through something right now and it's not the right time for them.
Yeah. Now, I know from reading on your website that the producer Damian Cavill was instrumental to the creation of this project. He's a very in-demand producer, I know. So how did you come to work with him, and what did he bring to the process?
Yeah, sure. I've been friends with Damo for quite a long time. We grew up in the eastern suburbs together of Melbourne, and we grew up playing in different kinds of bands when we were teenagers. When we're in our teenage years. So I wasn't sure who I was going to do this record with. I had sort of thought of a few different options, and I ended up saying to Damo, I really would like to do this with you, purely from the fact that he knew me and that he knew the circumstances. And I wanted someone that, was sort of aware of what had gone on, but wasn't that close that they knew everything. But I definitely didn't want someone that had no idea at all, because I felt like, you asked what did he bring to it. It was more that he understood the importance of what I was trying to do, and that was something that stayed true right till the end. He knew how important this record was, and he knew in particular how important the single Lionheart was. And we actually worked on that song for about 3 or 4 days.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and the original version we scrapped. We went to another one. We tweaked that. We continued. We just kept on adding to it over and over again until we felt like it was what we were after. And on top of that, as well as his understanding of the situation, Damo just brings this amazing ability to be able to hear what it is that you're describing in your head, and you're sort of sitting there going, yeah, but I'm hearing this sound, or I'm feeling this kind of emotion here, and he's got this knack of being able to produce that in some kind of way, whether it's his own instrumentation or getting me or advising me to do something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No wonder he's so in demand,
Yeah.
as well as playing in the wilds. So
right. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, I would imagine for a songwriter, it's an interesting, perhaps sometimes infuriating process. I don't know, of having your song constructed and then in that recording process, as you said, 3 or 4 days for the title track. Yeah. Of pulling it apart and putting it back together. Do you enjoy it? I guess it's an editing process. Do you enjoy that kind of editing process with your songs when you're the sole songwriter?
I love recording. It's my favorite thing to do. I think because when I write, I always have a bigger sound in my head anyway. And it's just, it's like you get the entire day /week/weeks to just sit there and create music. It's the most incredible experience in the world. And being able to hear those songs develop the way that they do is just such a rewarding thing. It's a pity it costs so much, because I could just do it every single day of my life. But you have to be prepared when you go in, because if you're not prepared, you're just sitting there wasting time, which is wasting money. Mm-hmm. So I don't mind. I don't get frustrated at the process. I think with this particular record, I wasn't fussed about the length of time that we used to create certain songs, because there was so much value to it.
Right. I also read that it's Beyonce's favorite thing to record as well, and I think apparently she just goes into the studio and records when she wants to relax or whatever. So
yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing. I really enjoy it. Yeah.
Now you've been in bands, a couple of bands, but this is your 3rd solo album, I believe. So do you prefer solo songwriting, or do you like a collaboration?
So I've always written solo. I've been very, I look at my sort of career, if you want to put it like that, as a musician over the years, and I've always been very much wanting to share music with other people. Right. And for a long time there, that was about playing with others on stage. I felt I started off with this whole Chris Cavill thing as solo, and I always wanted to be sharing and playing with other people. So I started to put together backing bands to bring the best out of my music. Well, that's how I felt at the time. And I sort of, as I've got a bit older, I've kind of realized that maybe it's not so much now about playing with others on stage, but more connecting with the audience. There's a way that you can have that same experience, by doing it on your own. I think it's all about sort of stages of life where you're at. There's nothing. I like them both. There's that beautiful feeling of being able to create dynamics with other musicians on stage with you, and I also went through a bit of a period where I wanted to rock out a little bit more.
Fair enough.
It's quite hard to do on your own.
Yeah.
So there was those times as well. In my sort of late 20s, early 30s, I would enjoy sort of having a bit of a party on stage, and and rocking out a fair bit and putting on a little bit of a wild show. I guess, as I'm getting a bit older, I've got kids. I'm a little bit more in touch with my emotions. I'm enjoying this period of just playing alone.
Well, and also, I suppose it takes a while to get to a point, perhaps, maybe, where you're ready to be that vulnerable, to be on your own, particularly with the material you have, because you and a guitar on a stage singing about grief and joy and all sorts of things, it does open up a big connection with the audience. And for sure, there will be at least one person who's going to come up to you and talk about how you connected. And sometimes you're not ready for that at certain stages of life.
It's a great way to put it, because if I look back at the shows that I did from 25 through to, early 30s, it wasn't about talking to the crowd and telling them how I was feeling and telling them about why I wrote this song and getting all deep and personal. It was just about, let's have a good time tonight. Come on, let's rock out. And, so it's interesting that you put it that way. Now all I want to do is just, have deep and meaningful.
And the good thing is you've got a great format for that. Ready to go. I was going to say something that's completely gone out of my head. So you talked about playing live, so I will ask you, you have some shows coming up next year, I believe, in support of the album.
So it is a Songs of Lionheart national tour, and I've been working very hard behind the scenes putting this together. I've handpicked some of the finest intimate venues in all, lots of towns along the coast. So I'm really, really wrapped with what we've been able to put together. And it is a tell-all performance. It's me sitting there on a chair and, being able to sort of bring people together and take them through the journey of what I've gone through with this album. I'm not holding back on anything. I'm open to questions from the audience. It's a way to be able to celebrate Dad's life. So I want to take these songs on the road. I want to tell his story. I want to tell my story. And I'm taking my family with me as well, which is going to be really cool. So
in a caravan sort of thing, because I know there's been a trend of that. Gretazilla. Has been in a caravan.
We've got the camper trailer packed up, ready to go. We'll stop in towns, and whatever happens. If there's somewhere, if we're set up somewhere and people want to put on a spontaneous show, then I'm ready to do that.
Fantastic. Well, so we should keep an eye on your website, obviously, for all those details.
Announced on Monday.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, coming out on Monday. So 14 dates. Sorry, it'll span over about 2 months.
Up the eastern seaboard, by the sound of it.
Yeah, so starting off in Melbourne, I've got 3 shows at the Wesleyan. I've been very fortunate to have a good following down here that sold out the first 2. So we've got the 3rd show announced just recently, and then there'll be 11 other shows that will go from between Sydney and the Sunshine Coast across March.
And yes, you will be allowed into Queensland, which is great.
Yeah, are we now?
Not maybe. I don't know. I'm not going to lose track of all these dates.
Yeah, I know. When I was putting it together, I went, forget about this year, forget about January, because January's school holidays and family time and all that kind of stuff. We're going away and we want to just relax. I'm like, let's look into 2022 and start off with a bang.
I think that's wise. And so many people, I believe, just from observing the one show I've been to thus far, are very keen to see live music again. So
yeah, and I'm getting that feeling as well, which is really awesome.
Yeah. Well, Chris, it's been such a privilege and a pleasure to talk to you about this album. I'm sure you will have more people telling you how much they love it. And I'll reiterate, I loved it as well. Thank you for creating it.
Thank you so much. Cheers. Thanks very much.